Whenever I'm working on a project, I usually like to record footage of me working on it, and oftentimes the best way to do that is have a camera mounted overhead. And so in the past, I've used this thing, which is literally just a tripod where I can mount my camera, and there's two big lights that are literally just rubber banded to the sides of the tripod. I want to build a better solution that's like less just annoying to use in general. So for the design of this overhead camera rig, I'm going to start with a big box and add bars on the sides and back for stability. For lighting, I'm going to put 2 light bars on the sides and then add 2 light panels on the top. I'm also going to build this rail, which the camera will be able to sit on and slide left or right. This rail is going to lay across the bars on the left and right of the main camera box, and the rail will be able to slide forwards or backwards on those bars, giving the camera a full range of motion. To make the main frame of the overhead camera rig, I'm going to be using this 1/2-inch PVC pipe. It's super cheap, like $1.50 for 10 feet. And you can get all sorts of fittings for it, corners, T-joints, whatever you need to build the frame for your project. I also got this PVC pipe cutter for like $10, and this makes it way easier to cut a ton of pipes than if I was using like a saw or something like that. Now I measure out the length of pipe I need and start making my cuts. Now we can actually start assembling the thing. This is where the pipe fittings come in, and for most projects like this, you're actually going to spend more money on the fittings than on the pipe itself because the pipe is just so cheap. So the total cost of the thing you're building actually ends up being more dependent on the complexity of it and how many fittings you're using rather than the actual size of the frame. The clip that you're seeing right now is actually me building a shelf after the overhead camera rig. I lost the original clip because it corrupted, but the process here is pretty much the same no matter what frame you're building. This stuff is great to work with because it's so easy to assemble, easy to cut, and if you mess up, you can just disassemble it really easy and buy another 10 feet of pipe for $1.50. After building the basic frame, I screw in these light bars and plug them in. Now I'm building the mounting bar for the overhead light panels. I've used these corner pieces on the ends of the bar so that it can't slide side to side and fall off the thing, but it can slide forwards and backwards. And since the whole thing is a uniform width, if I want a more direct light, I can mount it on a lower rung as well. So I built all this last night, and after sleeping on it, I have some changes that I want to make. First off, I didn't actually buy enough parts to do what I originally intended to do. I meant to have this bar that goes across here that the camera mounts on, but I didn't buy enough pieces to be able to make it. So I went to the hardware store and I bought 3 more of these 10-foot rods. So I should have way more than I need. Spoiler alert, I did not have more pipe than I needed. I still ran out. Next, I have to make a mount so that the camera can actually go on the overhead rig. So first I'm taking off all my extra stuff on my camera, the light bar, the microphone, and the lens. I have this metal cage attached to the actual camera body, and that'll help with mounting stuff onto the camera. I'm cutting a notch out of this scrap piece of wood so that it'll be able to attach to the front of the camera and nest around the lens. So I just give it a quick stain and drill my holes to attach it to the camera cage. So the camera fits in and there's a hole for the lens, and now I have this platform that I'll be able to use to mount the camera to the overhead rig. Now I put together the camera mounting bar, which is going to slide back and forth exactly like the light bar that we built earlier. Now I'm going to attach these pipes to the wood that we just put on the camera so that the camera will be able to slide left and right on the bar that we just built. And with the 2 sliding mounts that we've just made, now the camera can go forwards, backwards, left, and right as far as it needs to. Another thing that I was thinking about is I want this thing to actually be painted black. So I did some testing last night. I just spray painted one of these PVC pipes without sanding it or anything. Usually you'll want to do some sanding and prep work when you're painting stuff, especially like glossy plastics. Paint's not going to stick that well. And like if I scratch this, the paint does start to come off a little bit. I don't really care if it gets scraped up like that, and I can always spray paint it again later, so I'm not super worried about the prep work. So I'm just going to paint it as is without sanding it or anything. It just seems like that's going to be more work than it's worth. Before I go ahead and paint the entire camera box, there's a few things I want to add. So right here I'm building a little hole for the wires for the lighting to route through. I also added this T-joint towards the bottom right of the camera box, and this will be used to mount a small camera monitor later. So at this point, this thing is pretty much ready to paint. I just need to take off the lights because they're not getting painted, pull out the wires again, and then disassemble it so that I can actually get it out my door. So I picked a pretty bad time of day to actually paint this thing. It was pretty cold and windy, and if it's cold outside when you're spray painting, the paint won't stick as well and it'll dry slower. And if it's windy, obviously you're going to get paint coming at you and it's not going to actually go onto your the thing that you're painting as much. But as I said before, I'm not super concerned with how this thing looks. I just want it to be functional. It actually came out looking pretty good considering how carelessly I painted it. With everything reassembled, now I had to give the rig its first proper test. This new camera mount is super nice. It slides really smooth in whatever direction I need it to, and the lighting in this rig is way more consistent than it was on my old setup. I have the camera rail mounted on one of the higher rungs here so that I can get a really wide shot, but I can also drop it down lower to get an up-close shot if I need to. I also bought some cool flooring tiles to use as backdrops, and you can buy stuff like this that's intended for photography, but it's like so expensive. And this stuff you can buy one tile for like $2 or $3 and it looks great. I also mounted these rolls of paper on the back of the camera rig so that I can pull them out and get different colors of backdrops easy as well. So the overhead camera rig can also operate as a photography light box. So I totaled up how much it cost me to build this thing. In total it was like $8 of just straight pipe, maybe like $20 of fittings. For paint, I used 2 cans of spray paint, but I wasted a lot of paint because it was windy. I could have done it with 1 if I was painting in the right conditions, so like $5 of paint. The lights, I already had them on hand, so I didn't spend anything on those, but when I did buy them, they were like just whatever was the cheapest on clearance for like 10 or $15 for each of the sets, so maybe $20-$30 for the 4 lights in total. The paper rolls were like under $10 each, something like that. So not expensive at all. I probably spent $40 building this thing because I didn't have to buy the lights. If you want to go and build one, probably $50-$60, something like that. And then I also spent maybe $10 on those flooring tile samples that I'm using as backdrops. And since I was having fun building stuff out of PVC pipe, I ended up building a couple more things. So I built this light stand that I'm using for these direct-to-camera shots, using maybe $1 or $2 of PVC pipe and another one of those $10 clearance light sets. I modded one of the lights to be warm light, so I get a nice blend of warm and cool light. I also built this shelf that I'm using as a shoe rack, using some scrap wood that I had laying around and maybe $8 or $9 of PVC pipe. So in total, with the overhead camera rig, all the paper rolls, all that stuff, the shelf and the new light stand, I spent maybe $60, including the PVC pipe cutter that I didn't have before. So that is pretty cheap for what it is. These overhead camera rigs, you can buy professional ones from real camera companies, and they're like, I don't know, $300-$400, like pretty expensive. I think building stuff out of this can make a super fun weekend project. It's cheap, it's easy. You don't have to have any complex tools or anything, just a $10 PVC pipe cutter. So yeah, if you want to build a little shelf, your own photography setup, whatever you're doing, wood prices are still higher because of supply chain issues or whatever. So building stuff out of wood isn't as economical, but this is super easy, super fun, and you can reuse the stuff if you decide to tear down whatever you made. If you're interested in design, making stuff, whatever it is, stick around and subscribe, leave a comment, I read all of them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.